This podcast is sponsored by Hollywood Casino in Charlestown, West Virginia. April's featured entertainment includes Los Lobos on the 12th, Josh Turner on the 13th, and the Steel Woods on the 26th. Details and tickets at HollywoodCasinoCharlestown.com. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor and attend a show. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. March Madness enters the Final Four today, so it's the perfect time to highlight a legendary team from a historically black college that just earned an invitation to the White House yesterday. I spoke to Eric Drath, director of the documentary The Dream Whisperer, now streaming on the PBS app, chronicling NBA legend Dick Barnett's quest to get his college team inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Eric Drath, I'm the director of The Dream Whisperer.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Jason. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, talk about the timing, how this is sort of a kind of a perfect time for March Madness. I mean, I couldn't think of a better time to release this thing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the timing just worked out really, really nice, but it certainly wasn't planned this way. This film and the whole process, it's now been over 12 years from when we first decided to make the film and take on the project till now. And even though we stopped filming and in 2019 and started editing it, and it was done by 2021, the mission to get it released and distributed has been parallel to the story in general. It's certainly been a quest, an odyssey, and it parallels the story itself, which was a feat that was basically lost in history until one man, Dick Barnett, decided to do something about it.
Yeah, tell us exactly sort of what that story was. What was his mission? I mean, I know I've seen the movie, but just for a soundbite for the radio, to explain who Dick Barnett was. Set the stage really fast of how he's famous, what we know him for, NBA, and then but what people might not know about his college career.
Sure. Well, Dick Barnett is a legendary New York Knicks NBA star. He played in both the 1970 and 73 New York Knicks championship teams. He also played on the Lakers, and he also played in Syracuse. I mean, he was a unbelievable, great NBA player. His jersey is retired and hanging in the rafters at Madison Square Garden to this day. But what a lot of people didn't know is that before he got to the NBA, he played for a HBCU team at the time called the Tennessee A&I Tigers. It's now called Tennessee State University. And that team in 1957, 1958, and 1959 did what had never been done before, and to this day has never been done. They were the first team to ever three-peat in basketball integrated championship play. They did it for the NAIA title because at the time, that was the only league that would let an HBCU team in for that type of play. The NCAA at that time was not letting HBCUs play in the tournament.
And when you say HBCU, we tell everybody it's historically black colleges is what that stands for.
That's correct. Yeah. So this was a team where, it was a HBCU. So they were only allowed to play mostly HBCUs until 1953 when the NAIA decided to integrate the tournament and allow these teams to participate. Up till then, it was predominantly white teams that played.
Right, and it was Coach John McClendon at Tennessee A&I College who was sort of leading that charge to try to get it integrated. And talk about, not only was it a huge feat to three-peat just on the court in general, but talk about sort of the social unrest and what they had to endure during those three championships. Talk about how after that first one, they came straight back home to Nashville to join, straight from the airport to the lunch counter sit-ins. And during the race's chants, we are the Redbirds, who are the Blackbirds, like all that. It's like talk about how it was more than just excelling on the basketball court. It was like in trying to block out all of that madness while doing it.
Yeah, this their achievement was performed during the civil rights era, during the Jim Crow laws, and what was going on in America was a lot of civil unrest, and the team, never got the recognition after winning one, two, and then three unbelievable championships that a team today might. Instead of being celebrated and invited to the White House and all over the media, they actually, since they were in Nashville, went right to the sit-in lines where they were. Water was sprayed on them by hoses, to try to control them. They were, humiliated. People threw milkshakes on them. They spit on them. It was a different time in America, and so their mission was not just on the court. They had this obligation outside of what they were doing on the basketball court to stand up for what they believed. And this was a time when Martin Luther King, was at the helm of leading this effort. And so their play was inspired by something much greater than just winning on the court. They knew they had to win on the court because this was historic.
Oh, absolutely. And they did. And maybe, do you think that that's where Dick Barnett got some of his resiliency in, they had to be resilient during that whole period and winning the 3 titles. But then you see, then he has to have even a great amount of resiliency to try to get the team inducted into the Hall of Fame. Like this whole, you mentioned you've been working on it for, 12 years or whatever, until the team was finally inducted in 2019. But talk about how you sort of, as filmmakers, had the idea to, kind of walk us through that, show all of the failed induction ceremonies, all of the times with other people at the podium where they didn't get in. And to me, it almost has like a cumulative effect on the viewer where you're like, oh man, are they ever going to get in? And then they finally do. You get the release and the relief. So was that sort of a conscious thing, the cumulative effect?
Yeah, well, so when we started it, it was no sure bet that they were going to make it into the Hall of Fame. And in fact, it was the odds were 100% against them getting inducted. We didn't even think they were eligible at the time anymore. It had been so many years. So when we first started filming with Dick, it definitely seemed like a very, very high obstacle to overcome. But Dick Barnett, that determination that he has, that made him one of the greatest NBA players of all time, that made him and helped him to lead this team through this adversity and through overcoming the social barriers that they had at the time, is infectious. And it was that determination which fascinated me. And we knew that we needed to follow the story wherever the outcome may be. And so there were times where I threw my hands up in the air and I was like, oh my God, this is never going to happen. What are we doing? But Dick wouldn't let that happen. And we just say, okay, he's going to see Spike Lee at the Garden. Let's go. He's going to see Al Sharpton. Let's go. He's going to Tennessee State to talk to these students. Let's go. Wherever he went, we followed because we knew that his determination, his persistence was something that was extraordinary and was something that needed to be seen.
Oh, the persistence is incredible. And like you're mentioning, you mentioned, Al Sharpton sort of taking up the cause, but then, there's, pomp and circumstance, but the momentum eventually fades. And then, even when he's at the Garden trying to convince Spike Lee to, hey, remember my documentary? It's almost heartbreaking. You can sort of see in Spike's eyes, like, oh God, I'm so busy. I don't know if I can do this. But Barnett's just trying, he's hammering away, trying to get someone to do it. Remind us, where are you in this process? Cause you directed the ESPN 30 for 30 on Pete Rose. And I mean, you're probably doing other projects throughout this, I don't know, last dozen of years, but so this was just something you sort of keep coming back in between the other stuff?
Yeah, I mean, in the years between when we started and now, I've done several other films. You know, these films are, you'll shoot and then you'll move on to something else and then you'll come back to it. It's not like every day for 11 years we were shooting and then 12 years to get it released. You know, it really is, start and stop. Until you get to the edit, and then once we started editing it, it's a full, time process to get it done. But we have several projects going on at one time. But I also want to just pick up on one thing that you mentioned that I just thought of, is that when you see him go to Spike Lee and plead his case, and it's really to deaf ears, and he doesn't get deterred, is very similar to at the lunch counters when, these guys, were humiliated and they didn't fight back because they knew in order to get to where they needed to get, they needed to keep their composure. And that is a message for so many people out there today. It's like, you can protest, you can try to get what you want, but if the reception is not what you want and we're expecting, doesn't mean you should quit or you should act belligerent. It means you just keep moving on with grace and dignity. And that's what Dick Barnett has taught me.
Absolutely. And I guess 87 now. I think he'll be 88 later this year. But yeah. It's awesome seeing him, you getting him to sit down for interviews, and remind our listeners some of the, some of the other huge names, particularly, his NBA teammates that appear in this, that sit down for interviews with you. I mean, for you, clearly as a sports fan, that must have been like dream come true, sitting down with some of these people.
Oh yeah. I mean, what's incredible is that the story also is kind of like a cycle of life story. When we started shooting with Dick, he was a lot younger, and you can see as the film goes on, he ages. And unfortunately, one of the realities is a lot of the people that we interviewed also passed away during the making of the film. Some of the coaches, McClendon's widow, Anthony Mason, we even got to, David Stern, the great, commissioner of the NBA. So you see, and some of his teammates as well. And by the way, and that's why it's so imperative right now that the White House today invite Dick and the last surviving and living members of the team to the White House to finally get the recognition they deserve from our country, because this story is more than basketball, even though basketball is embedded in the fabric of our country. This is a story of perseverance, of against all odds, and never forgetting our past and history, and celebrating no matter how long it takes, because justice has no time limit.
I agree. So that's the latest quest, is to I know that is to get the team a meeting with President Biden, and maybe they could screen your documentary at the White House and just have an official, honoring ceremony at the White House. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it now, think about any team that wins a national championship. What's the next day, the headline? The White House invites them to, or the president calls to congratulate. They didn't get any of that. Not one, not two, not three times. But today, these guys deserve that.
Absolutely. And you're this is WTOP radio. We're the top station in DC. We're in all news stations, so it's very possible that President Biden's limo might have us tuned into listen to traffic reports and stuff. So why don't you speak directly to him if he's listening to this right now? Say, hey, Mr. President, come on, invite us.
Yeah, well, certainly, Mr. President, with all due respect, I know how busy you must be, handling the world affairs and, of course, our countries. But please listen to the over 50 congressmen that have written and signed this letter asking for you to finally recognize this team. And I realize that you might have just been hearing of this story for the first time, but the institution of our country, the White House, the greatest power in the world, should finally recognize this team, invite them, as aging as they are, It'll take some work. We'll need to get some wheelchairs and bring some special travel accommodations, but please invite them. It will mean the world to them, to their families, and to the HBCUs that all support this school and to our country.
Well said. And I guess sort of on a final note, let's talk a little bit about the White House is one, local DC tie of a reason why we're running this story, but also tell me, is executive produced by a DC filmmaker, right? And also one of the last interviews with Georgetown coach John Thompson Jr. So yeah, speak to sort of those two local angles too.
Well, first I want to just say interviewing Coach Thompson was definitely a highlight of the along the process of making this film. Coach Thompson was, at first he agreed, but then when we got to do the interview, he was like, wait, what's this about? And almost didn't do the interview there. And if you've ever met him, he does what he wants. He doesn't listen to anybody. One of the things that made him such a great coach. But he finally sits down and he lets us have it in the interview in the best of ways. He said, this is BS, what's going on. And of course, this is institutional racism, the reason that they weren't inducted into the Hall of Fame all these years and forgotten. When there were so many teams that had achieved so much less that were inducted. So that was definitely a great moment. And I can't say enough about the man who really made this happen, Ed Peskowitz, a Washington, D.C. native, just a true, caring, thoughtful man who decided that this was a story that needed to be told, not for any money, not for acclaim. In fact, he probably wouldn't even like the fact that I'm calling him out now. That's how humble, gracious, and righteous this man is. He did it for all the right reasons. This film would not have happened without him. And also George Willis, the great journalist who wrote the original story for the New York Post about Dick starting to, raise the issue of getting the team inducted in the first place. So without George Willis, without Ed Peskowitz, I wouldn't be here now talking about this great film.
So awesome. And was he former owner of the Hawks or something?
Yeah, he owned the Atlanta Hawks. Yeah, he was owner of the Atlanta Hawks, and he's done a lot of good in this world, with his foundation and with the things that he believes in. He's just an incredible guy and a fellow New Yorker from Brooklyn.
Oh, that's so cool. But yes, everybody, you have to tune in, and yes, you'll see the late Coach Thompson of Georgetown legendary fame. David Stern, and then you also get Willis Reed and Walt Frazier and Earl Monroe and Bill Bradley and Phil Jackson. I don't know if they're all in it. I know they were his teammates.
Dr.
Most
J.
of them show up. Most of them show up.
Dr. J was in it too. Yeah.
Dr. J.
Right.
It's crazy the people that show up in this thing. But
it's a testament to Dick Barnett. He was never like a walking soundbite for the NBA. He's not like a corporate kind of like, let's go make a commercial with Dick Barnett. This is a guy who, whatever he's thinking, will tell you, but respectfully. He's a very, very determined and serious man. I mean, he went back and got his PhD, for crying out loud.
Yeah, Dr. Barnett, and
that's right.
Dozens of books and speaking engagements, and it's cool seeing sort of the end of the documentary of just how far he's come with all of his outreach too. It's pretty wild. But hey, thank you so much for doing this. This was a blast, and I really enjoyed the movie. And best of luck. We'll try to get the year of the White House.
Thank you so much, Jason. Anything you could do would be really appreciated. I'll let Dick know. I'm going to see him a little later today about this interview, and we really appreciate everything.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.